Hi all, in this video we're going to walk through an unsupervised classification. That is asking the computer to cluster together like pixels and then having the user come in after the fact and assign those clusters of pixels to actual land cover classes. So first things first, let's work on this image. If we want to, I just want to show you a quick trick to get rid of this black border, which has a value of 0, 0, 0. It's a relic of clipping or extracting data. We could have avoided this if we had specified clip to layer extent when we were running our export tool. I'm going to click Display Background Value under Symbology for this layer, and that's going to disappear. Now, with the parent reflectance highlighted, we're going to hit the Imagery tab up at the top. Now, we've used this before for georeferencing our raster functions, but we haven't used the classification wizard, which we use for unsupervised classification, any of the classification tools, or any of the indices. And we can calculate a whole bunch of different indices from Landsat data or other multispectral data. Just wanted to point those out there. What we're going to do is we're going to open the classification wizard. We're going to select an unsupervised classification, and we're going to select a pixel-based classification based just on color. We can also do an object-based classification, which would be informed by both color and the shape of objects. For this image, we really don't need it, so we're going to avoid it for right now. Our output location should be our geodatabase. We don't need to modify that. Classification schema. Click the little arrow here, and we're going to just use the default schema. I'm going to click Next. Now, I've played around with this a little bit, and I know that this works well with 11 different classes. Some images that are simpler may work well with a fewer number of classes. You may need more classes. I played around. 11 was the one that kind of worked the best for this image. And we won't actually have 11 land use classes coming out of the back end of it. Some of them we're going to smush together, but this allows us to sort of pick out the different covers really nicely. I'm going to click Run. And I'm left with an image here. This image is going to show me all the different cover classes available on my map. So it's sort of pulled out our water really well, as you can see here from the lake. Right up here, see it says press the L key to toggle transparency. If I just click L button, I can turn my preview off and on just to sort of see how well we're doing here. So it looks like it's picking out these ag fields pretty well in that green. Doing a good job with forest and water. Looks like maybe there's a little bit of confusion with shadows over here and water, which is fairly common with an unsupervised classification. So I'm just going to click Next. And I'm going to call this my, this will be my unsupervised first version. And I'm just going to click Run. Now that should get added right to my map. At this point, I can uncheck my preview, my classified preview, get rid of that. Make sure to keep my unsupervised first version here because we'll need it later. Then I'm going to click Next. The next step up is to manually assign land cover classes to these clusters of pixels. So this is done by selecting a class, clicking the point, and assigning a group of pixels to that land cover type. Now, our base available layers are water, developed, barren, 3 different types of forest, shrubland, herbaceous, planted, cultivated, wetlands. We'll probably only need to use these ones, but if we did want to add additional classes that don't exist here, make sure to highlight NLCD 2011 up top here, and then click this little plus button. And this is where we could add something like a glacier. Give it a value of 4. We'll make it gray, and it'll give you a warning if another class has that same value. Give it a description if we want. Click OK. Now we'll see a glacier class that we could assign to our data if we wanted to. We can also put subclasses in. So for wetlands, for example, maybe we want a forested wetland option. So I'm going to highlight wetlands. I'm going to click plus. You can see our parent class is wetlands here. We do forested wetlands. Give it a value of 76. Why not, right? And we'll give sort of a greenish blue and click OK. So now we see we've got a new child class of wetlands, forested wetlands. So we can create sort of a dictionary of the different land cover types we want to add to our classification here. For now, we're going to keep it simple. I'm going to highlight water, click my little assign button, and then click on this. You see how that has now changed. What was previously class 7 is now assigned to water. All right, I'm going to work on my forest next. If I turn my unsupervised off, I can turn my preview then off and on to sort of see what is what. So it looks like this class is forest, and this class here is forest. See how I'm kind of changing those classes to match? Looks like this darker brown is also forest. And this really dark brown is forest as well. Okay, so it looks like I've done a decent job of picking out most of the forested land here. It looks to me like this pinkish land, sort of up high, right but below some of the highest areas, which are sort of showing up in this bright green. That looks to me kind of like herbaceous. So it would be sort of like alpine grassland. So I'm going to grab the herbaceous class over here. I'm just going to assign that pink to herbaceous. Next, I'm going to, it looks like the classification is having a little bit of trouble distinguishing barren land, sort of open barren land, this bright green stuff, from developed land. So I might have to fudge this a little bit and just sort of select barren for this, all of this tan. Oh, not the tan stuff. That was our herbaceous layer. Send that back to herbaceous. I'm going to select barren for all of this bright green stuff here. So that's going to be all of the urban stuff. And also that's also going to be some of our high elevation things, which we're getting just a little bit confused. Last, we have our sort of planted and cultivated areas. And these pop out really nicely here on the map in the dark green. So highlight planted, cultivated. Going to assign that to a yellow. And then these blue areas as well need to get assigned to planted, cultivated. So now when we look at our image, with the exception of our sort of no data around the edge there, we can see we've actually got a pretty nice classified image here. We've got our farmland to the east. We've got our forests over here. We've got some confusion between forest shadow and the lake itself. That often happens in an unsupervised classification, and something we can address in a supervised classification. And then we've got water shoreline delineated really well, sort of barren and herbaceous cover in town, lawns and buildings. And herbaceous cover as well. A little bit of confusion up in high elevations between cropland and sort of barren alpine terrain. Again, that's to be expected with an unsupervised classification, or even a supervised classification. So once that's done, I'm going to click Next. and I get a preview of my final data set. Everything looks good to me, so I'll call this my final unsupervised classification, and I'll click Run. So I now have my final unsupervised classification. I can click Finish down here, and I can get rid of all of these sort of unnecessary intermediate steps. I'll remove all of those. Now all I have is my final unsupervised classification and my original image. In the symbology here, I'm going to come and make sure that's no color there, so that I now have water, barren, forest, herbaceous, and planted or cultivated. Looks good. I'm going to save, and we're going to move on to a supervised classification for our next example. See you in a few.